Blessings all. Thank you for joining with me again today. While I don't know about you, I know I have received tremendous blessings through these studies. The effort put into writing them has really served to enhance my own personal understanding of who Jesus really is. So, as we continue today, I want to consider Jesus as the role model, really the perfect role model for servanthood. During his Last Supper with his disciples, Jesus was intent upon preparing them for the events that were about to unfold and the events that there would follow thereafter. Over the next number of hours, Jesus was going to be arrested, illegally tried, beaten, whipped, and crucified. Yet, amid his anguish, an argument settles in among some of the disciples over who's going to be considered the greatest among them. Luke 22, verses 24 to 27 record the incident and the response of Jesus to the subject matter. Beginning with verse 24, then they began to argue among themselves about who would be the greatest among them. Now, Jesus told them, in this world, the kings and great men lord it over their people, yet they are called friends of the people. But among you, it will be different. Those who are the greatest among you should take the lowest rank, and the leaders should be like a servant. Who is more important, the one who sits at the table or the one who serves? The one who sits at the table, of course, but not here, for I am among you as one who serves. Like so many others, the disciples anticipated a Messiah who was going to come in and liberate them from Roman rule and establish a kingdom. In this kingdom, they wanted powerful positions. Each considered himself to be especially worthy of this. But Jesus rebuked them in verse 27. He said, I am among you as one who does what? Who serves. What makes their discussion even more surprising is the fact that earlier that same evening, Jesus had shown them, exemplified for them the perfect, stunning example of what true servanthood really is. Now, before we go any further, I want to take a look at how John records that event in John chapter 13, verses 1 through 17. John writes, before the Passover celebration, Jesus knew that his hour had come to leave the world and return to his Father. He had loved his disciples during his ministry on earth, and now he loved them to the very end. It was time for supper, and the devil had already prompted Judas, son of Simon Iscariot, to betray Jesus. Jesus knew that the Father had given him authority over everything, and that he had come from God, and that he would return to God. So he got up from the table, he took off his robe, he wrapped a towel around his waist, and he poured water into a basin. Then he began to wash the disciples' feet, drying them with the towel he had around him. When Jesus came to Simon Peter, Peter said to him, Lord, are you going to wash my feet? And Jesus replied, you don't understand now what I am doing, but someday you will. No, Peter protested, you will never, ever wash my feet. Jesus replied, unless I wash you, you won't belong to me. Simon Peter exclaimed, then wash my hands and head as well, Lord, not just my feet. Jesus replied, a person who is bathed all over does not need to wash except for the feet to be entirely clean. And you disciples are clean, but not all of you. For Jesus knew who would betray him. That is what he meant when he said, not all of you are clean. After he washed their feet, he put on his robe again, and he sat down and he asked, do you understand what I was doing? You call me teacher and Lord, and you're right, because that's what I am. And since I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you ought to wash each other's feet. I have given you an example to follow. Do as I have done to you. I tell you the truth, slaves are not greater than their master, nor is the messenger more important than the one who sends the message. Now that you know these things, God will bless you for doing them. Tremendous word from the word today. Now, in that time and place, foot washing met a practical need, but it was done by servants. It wasn't done by a rabbi or a teacher. So when Jesus washed their feet, his bewildered disciples didn't know how to react. To see their highly esteemed teacher wrap a towel around his own waist, get himself a basin of water, and then begin to wash their filthy feet was a shocking experience, to say the least. The question that arises from this is, what motivated Christ to model humility to them in this way? And I believe that we can discover three answers in this text passage. First, we see in John 13:1 that it was all a part of God's plan for him. Jesus knew perfectly well who he was, where he came from, what his mission was, and the authority by which he was operating, as he reveals in verse 3. Now, the second answer is that he loved the disciples. This love included not only Peter and his clumsy attempt to avoid being served, as we see in verses 6 through 10, but his love extended also to Judas, whose betrayal of him was already in the works, as we see revealed in verses 2 and 11. And perhaps a third answer is because he was taking the very nature of a servant. And that was a very essential part of his mission of redemption, as Paul very vividly shared for us in Philippians 2:5 through 8. And there he wrote, "You must have the same attitude that Christ Jesus had. Though he was God, he did not think of equality with God as something to cling to. Instead, he gave up his divine privileges. He took the humble position of a slave and was born as a human being. When he appeared in human form, he humbled himself in obedience to God, and he died a criminal's death on a cross." We need to understand that we are not greater than Jesus. So if we don't follow his example, the failure to serve becomes a sin of pride, as we can find revealed in John 13, verses 14 through 16. Genuine service, on the other hand, is motivated by love, and it brings about blessing, as verse 17 shows us. As Paul explained in Galatians 5:13, true biblical freedom is characterized by humble service to one another. Think about how you would respond to this question. Just think about this for a minute. How can you best follow the example of Jesus and serve others? Think about it. How can you best follow Jesus's example and serve others? You know, even a small, very practical act can show Christ's love to others. Think about what James tells us in James chapter 2, verses 14 through 17. He writes, "What good is it, dear brothers and sisters, if you say you have faith, but don't show it by your actions?" I know a lot of Christians that way. Can that kind of faith save anyone? Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, "Goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well," but then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is dead and useless. I want to encourage you to give some serious consideration to these things today, and may God bless you as you do so. Until next time.